A plea resounded across the galaxy, and humanity answered. Tejan stood in the laboratory staring at data that made no sense. He had been studying the swarm bioships for 3 weeks now, and every day brought new questions. But today he had found something that changed everything. Captain Minho. "You need to see this," he said into his comm device. An hour later, Minho, Jiwoo, and Soman stood in the lab while Tejan explained his discovery. On the screen behind him were images of swarm neural structures, chemical compositions, and behavioral patterns. "The swarm is not what we think it is," Tejan began. "We assumed they were conquerors, destroyers, a species that chose to become a hive mind to better consume and expand. But that's not what the data shows." He pulled up a chemical analysis. "These compounds in their bioships are stress markers. Extreme sustained stress at the cellular level. The kind of stress that comes from trauma." "What are you saying?" Minho asked. "The swarm is afraid," Tejan replied. "Everything they do, the consumption of planets, the endless expansion, the hive mind itself, it's all driven by fear. They're not conquerors. They're refugees." Soman leaned forward, studying the data. "Refugees from what?" Kailara, who had been working with Tejun, pulled up another display. "We managed to decode some of their organic memory storage. It's fragmentary, but we found this." The screen showed images pulled from deep in the swarm's biological memory. A different galaxy, beautiful and strange. Then darkness, something vast and terrible consuming everything. The Relith fleeing, desperate, merging their minds together because unity was the only way to survive. They had escaped one extinction only to cause another. They've been running for so long they forgot why they started. Tejan said quietly. They consume planets because they think that's the only way to survive. They attack other species because they believe everyone is a threat. The hive mind is not about conquest. It's about never being alone, never being vulnerable, never facing the horror of extinction again. Minho sat down heavily. "So we've been fighting victims this whole time." "Victims who became monsters," Jiwoo added. "They've destroyed entire civilizations, killed billions. Does it matter if they were afraid?" "Yes," Minho said. "It matters, because if we just want revenge, we'll destroy them completely. But if we want peace, we need to understand them." The information was brought to the council. The reaction was mixed. Some council members wanted to use this knowledge to completely destroy the swarm. They argued that understanding the enemy's motivation changed nothing about the harm they had caused. But others, especially those who had fought alongside humans, wondered if there was another way. Threenox called for a vote. Should they pursue complete destruction of the swarm? Or should they attempt communication, try to find a peaceful solution? The vote was deadlocked until Admiral Hyejin spoke. "My people have a saying. Before you judge someone, walk a mile in their shoes. The swarm is afraid. They're traumatized. They're doing terrible things, yes, but they're doing them because they think it's the only way to survive. If we kill them all, we become the thing that destroyed them. We become the threat they were running from." The vote shifted. By a narrow margin, the council agreed to attempt communication. "But how do you talk to a hive mind you just shattered?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Some of the bioships that survived the Battle of Theranis had not fled. They had remained in the system, drifting, confused. Without the hive mind to guide them, the individual organisms inside were waking up, becoming aware of themselves as individuals for the first time in generations. Tejun proposed using modified quantum communication technology to speak directly to these individuals. It was risky. The swarm might see it as an attack and respond with violence, but they had to try. The message was carefully crafted. It was sent in mathematical patterns, universal concepts that any intelligent species could understand. Peace, communication, understanding. And one other concept, one that Minho insisted they include. Help. For 3 days there was no response. Then, slowly, one of the bioships began signaling back. The translation was rough, the communication uncertain, but the meaning was clear. Afraid. Always afraid. Ran so long. Consumed so much. Forgot who we were. Forgot why we ran. Only knew we had to survive. Had to keep moving. Had to stay together or die alone. Tejan spent hours communicating with the bioship. The entity inside had once been a scientist before the hive mind, before the endless consumption. It remembered the old world, the beautiful world that had been destroyed. It remembered choosing to join the hive mind because the alternative was facing extinction alone. We became what we feared, the entity communicated. We became destroyers because we were so afraid of being destroyed. There's another way, Tajin sent back. You don't have to consume to survive. We have worlds. Empty worlds, planets that can support life but have no native species. You can settle there. You can rebuild. You can be individuals again. You would help us? The disbelief in the message was clear. After what we did? Yes, Tajin replied. Because that's what people do. They help those who need it. The communication was shared with the council. Plans were made to locate suitable worlds for swarm settlement. But first, they needed to find the swarm's main nest, the origin point where new swarm fleets were still being created. If they could reach the central hive mind and communicate with it, they might be able to end the war entirely. The problem was location. The nest could be anywhere in the galaxy. Searching for it could take decades, unless they asked for directions. The bioship entity agreed to guide them. It still maintained some quantum connection to the main hive, faint and damaged, but enough to triangulate a location. The nest was in the galactic core, surrounded by millions of bioships. A combined fleet was assembled. Humans and council species together, armed not just for war but for communication. Minho would lead the human contingent, Thranox would command the council forces, and Tajin would attempt first contact with the central hive mind. The journey took 2 weeks. When they arrived at the coordinates, what they saw took their breath away. The swarm nest was massive, a structure the size of a small moon. It pulsed with bioluminescent light, beautiful in a terrifying way. Around it, millions of bioships formed a defensive sphere. The fleet had never seen so many swarm forces in one place. This is it, Minho said quietly. This is where we find out if peace is possible. Tajin prepared his message. It was simple, direct, and honest. We know you are afraid. We know you are running from something terrible. We know you think consumption is the only way to survive, but it is not. We can help you. We can give you a place to live, to rebuild, to be yourselves again. You do not have to be alone anymore. You do not have to be afraid anymore. The message was broadcast on all quantum frequencies, aimed directly at the central nest. Then they waited. The swarm's response was immediate and violent. The millions of bioships activated their weapons and began advancing on the fleet. The hive mind had interpreted the message as a threat. Sir, they're attacking, Jiwoo called out. Minho opened a channel to all ships. Hold your fire. Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage! Captain, they're going to destroy us! Someone shouted, hold your fire. The bioships advanced, weapons charging. On Earth, Yuna watched the tactical display with her heart in her throat. Her brother was dead. She could not lose Minho, too. But Minho believed in what they were doing. He believed that somewhere in that hive mind, something understood, something could hear them. This is Captain Minho of the United Earth Coalition. He broadcast on all frequencies. We heard your distress call, the one you sent out centuries ago when your world was destroyed. We heard you crying for help, and we came. Not to destroy you, not to hurt you. We came to help. The bioships were seconds away from firing range. We know what it is to be afraid, Minho continued. We know what it is to face extinction. We know what it is to feel alone in the darkness. But you are not alone anymore. We are here, and we are offering you peace. The bioship stopped. They hung in space, weapons still charged but no longer advancing. The entire fleet held its breath. Then, slowly, the quantum frequencies began to change. The hive mind was responding, not with violence but with communication. Taijun translated as fast as he could. They are listening. They are actually listening. The hive mind's response was fractured, confused, like someone waking from a long nightmare. Peace possible? After what we have done? Yes, Minho replied simply. Peace is possible. We have consumed worlds, destroyed civilizations. We are monsters. You were afraid. Thranox added his voice to the communication. You did terrible things because you thought you had no choice. We understand, and we forgive you. The quantum frequencies fell silent. On the Indomitable's bridge, every crew member stared at their screens, waiting. This was the moment. This was where the war would either end in peace or in final, total destruction. The hive mind spoke again. Its voice was not the cold, emotionless tone they had heard in battle. It was small, tired, and so very afraid. We do not want to be alone anymore. Then you will not be, Minho said. We offer you peace. We offer you worlds where you can live. We offer you a place among the species of this galaxy, not as conquerors, not as the swarm, but as individuals, as people, as friends. A plea resounded across the galaxy, and humanity answered. The combined fleet of Council and human ships assembled at the edge of the Theranos system. Ahead of them lay the largest concentration of Vrelith swarm forces they had encountered. 50,000 bioships, maybe more, all connected through the hive mind. Somewhere in the center of that nightmare, Daehyun would have to deploy the quantum disruptor array. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Minho opened a channel to all ships. "This is Captain Minho. Today we're going to do something that sounds impossible. We're going to punch through 50,000 enemy ships to give one man a chance to end this war. I know many of you are afraid. I'm afraid too. But fear doesn't matter. What matters is that someone needed help, and we answered. Now let's finish what we started." The fleet accelerated toward the swarm. The bioships detected them immediately and began forming their defensive pattern. Perfect coordination, perfect arrangement. They had adapted since the last battle, but they still relied on the hive mind. That would be their downfall. The first wave of Council ships crashed into the swarm fleet like a hammer. Weapons fire lit up the darkness of space. Bioships exploded, but more took their place. The swarm's numbers seemed endless. The human ships followed, using the same chaotic tactics that had worked before. They flew in random patterns, launched weapons at impossible angles, and generally made themselves unpredictable. The swarm adapted quickly, but adaptation took time. And time was what Daehyun needed. Slowly, painfully, the Allied fleet carved a corridor through the enemy forces. Ships died on both sides. Council warships that had fought for 3 years made final stands to hold the line. Human vessels pushed beyond their limits, engines burning out, hulls cracking under fire. On the Defiant, Daehyun flew like a man possessed. He dodged between bioships using debris as cover, making himself a difficult target. The quantum disruptor array sat in his cargo bay, counting down to deployment. "Daehyun, you're at the halfway point." Minho's voice crackled over the comm. "How are you holding up?" "Ship's taking damage, but I'm still flying," Daehyun replied. "Tell my family I love them." "Tell them yourself when you get back," Minho said, even though they both knew there was no coming back from this mission. The swarm realized what was happening. The entire hive mind focused on the small human ship trying to reach its center. Bioships peeled away from other battles, converging on Daehyun from every direction. Jiwoo saw it happening on her tactical display. "Sir, they're going to overwhelm him. He won't make it." "Then we make sure he does," Minho said. "All ships, protect the Defiant, whatever it takes." The human fleet responded instantly. The Indomitable accelerated to intercept bioships heading for Daehyun. The UEC Phoenix positioned itself between the Defiant and a cluster of enemies, taking fire meant for Daehyun. Other ships did the same, creating a shield with their own hulls. Council ships joined the effort. Thraenox commanded his vessel to ram a bioship that was about to fire on Daehyun. Kylara, aboard a Council science vessel, overloaded her ship's power core to generate a massive explosion that cleared a path. Daehyun flew through the chaos, watching his friends and allies die to give him a chance. Each sacrifice weighed on him. Each ship that exploded to protect him was a reminder of the cost of this mission. But he kept flying. He had to. Too many had given too much for him to stop now. Finally, after what felt like hours but was only minutes, he reached the center of the swarm fleet. Bioships surrounded him on all sides. His weapons were empty. His shields were gone. But he was in position. Daehyun activated the quantum disruptor array. The device began charging, drawing power from the Defiant's reactor. It would take 30 seconds to reach full power. 30 seconds while the entire swarm fleet converged on his position. "This is Daehyun," he said calmly into the comm. "Array is charging. 25 seconds. Bioships fired at him from every direction. The Defiant's hull began to fail. Alarms screamed warnings about hull breaches and system failures. 20 seconds. More hits. The ship spun wildly. Daehyun fought to stabilize it, knowing he had to keep the array pointed in the right direction. 15 seconds. His life support was failing. The air was getting thin. He could see stars through cracks in the hull. 10 seconds. He thought about home, about Earth, about his sister watching this from mission control. He hoped she understood why he had to do this. 5 seconds. The bioships were so close now, he could see the organic structures on their hulls. They pulsed with light, beautiful and terrible. Activating. The quantum disruptor array fired. A pulse of energy exploded outward from the Defiant. It was invisible to the eye, but every quantum-entangled particle in the region felt it. The pulse spread at the speed of light, washing over the swarm fleet, and the hive mind died. 50,000 bioships suddenly found themselves alone. The voice that had guided them, connected them, given them purpose, was gone. They were individuals again, perhaps for the first time in centuries. They panicked. Some tried to continue fighting but had forgotten how to fight without the hive mind telling them what to do. Others tried to flee but could not coordinate their escape. They crashed into each other, scattered in all directions, fired at random. The Allied fleet did not waste the opportunity. They attacked with everything they had. Without coordination, the swarm fleet collapsed. In less than an hour, it was over. The bioships that survived fled into deep space, leaderless and terrified. The Battle of Theranos was won, but there was no celebration on the Indomitable. Minho sat in his captain's chair, staring at the empty space where the Defiant had been. The ship had been destroyed in the array's activation. Daehyun was gone. In mission control on Earth, Yuna watched the battle data come in. She saw the Defiant signal disappear. She knew what it meant. Her brother was dead. She sat at her station and cried silently while around her, people cheered the victory. 3 days after the battle, Admiral Hedgen arrived on Theranos. She had come to represent Earth at the ceremony the Council was planning. As she stepped off her shuttle, Threenox and the other Council leaders were waiting for her. Admiral Hedgen, Threenox said, "We owe humanity a debt that can never be repaid. Your people came when we had given up hope. You fought when the battle seemed lost, and you gave your lives to save ours." "We did what anyone should do," Hedgen replied. "We heard someone calling for help." Threenox led her to a massive chamber, where representatives from all 7 council species had gathered. In the center of the room stood a monument newly constructed. It showed a human figure reaching out to grasp an alien hand. At the base were the names of every human who had died in the war. Daehyun's name was at the top. "For 1,000,000 cycles, the Council has ruled this region of space," Threenox said to the assembly. "We brought technology and order. We thought ourselves advanced, civilized, superior. But when death came for us, it was a species we considered primitive who answered our call. The humans have shown us that true civilization is not measured in technology or knowledge. It is measured in the willingness to help those who suffer." He turned to Admiral Hedgen. "We offer humanity full membership in the Galactic Council. We offer access to all our technology, all our knowledge, all our resources. It is a small payment for what you have given us." Hedgen looked at the monument, at her people's names carved in stone on an alien world. She thought about what they had sacrificed, what they had proven. "We thank you for the offer," she said carefully. "But we did not come for reward. We came because you needed help." The chamber fell silent. "However," Hedgen continued, "we would like to propose something different. Not membership under your council, but partnership. An alliance of equals. We will share our tactics and technology with you. You will share your knowledge with us. Together, we will make sure that no species ever has to send a distress call into the darkness and wonder if anyone will answer." Threenox looked at the other council leaders. They conferred quietly among themselves. Finally, he nodded. "An alliance of equals. Yes, we accept." In the days that followed, plans were made. The war with the swarm was not over, just paused. The hive mind had been shattered in the battle, but there were more swarm fleets out in the galaxy. And somewhere, there was the origin point, the place where the swarm had first been created. They would have to find it. They would have to end the threat permanently. But first, there was something else that needed attention. Soman had been studying the captured swarm bioships with Tejan and Kylara. What they discovered changed everything. A plea resounded across the galaxy, and humanity answered. The Vrelith swarm moved through space like a living thing. 10,000 bioships flowed toward Theranos in perfect formation, each one knowing exactly where every other ship was. They had destroyed hundreds of worlds using this same tactic. Perfect coordination, perfect knowledge, perfect execution. They did not know they were about to meet something they had never encountered before: chaos. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Minho watched the swarm approach. The Council fleet had formed a traditional defensive line, placing their heaviest ships at the front and lighter vessels behind. It was logical. It was what any military strategist would do. Jiwoo, Minho said calmly, "What's the most illogical thing we could do right now?" His tactical officer smiled. She understood her captain. "Charge directly at them, sir. Then that's what we'll do. All human ships follow my lead. Full speed ahead. Soman, I need maximum power to engines." "Sir, if we charge them head-on, they'll tear us apart," the weapons officer protested. "They'll try," Minho agreed, "but they're going to be very confused first." The 12 human ships broke formation and accelerated toward the swarm at maximum speed. The Council fleet commanders watched in horror. The humans were committing suicide, but Minho was counting on something. The swarm had fought the Council for 3 years. They knew how the Council thought. They knew how they fought. Every tactic, every strategy, every move was predictable because it was logical. Humans were not logical. Humans were insane. The swarm fleet adjusted its formation to meet the charging human ships. They prepared to envelop and destroy the 12 small vessels. It was what they had done 1,000 times before. The bioships moved into position with perfect precision, and then the Indomitable did something that made no sense. At the last possible second, it veered hard to starboard while launching every mine in its inventory. The mines scattered in a random pattern that looked like it had no purpose, but it did have a purpose. The swarm ships, moving in perfect coordination, could not adjust fast enough. They were too perfectly arranged. When the mines detonated, the explosions cascaded through their formation. Ships crashed into each other trying to avoid the blasts. For the first time in the battle, the swarm's formation broke. Jiwoo immediately launched the next phase of her attack. She had calculated something beautiful and terrible. She fired the Indomitable's main weapons not at the swarm ships, but at the debris field surrounding the planet. The energy blasts struck chunks of destroyed stations and dead ships, sending them spinning toward the swarm fleet. The swarm tried to dodge, but dodging required the ships to break formation even further. Their perfect coordination started to collapse. Individual bioships began making their own decisions, trying to avoid collisions. "Now, Soman," Minho shouted. The chief engineer had been waiting for this moment. She had spent the last hour overloading the Indomitable's fusion reactors beyond any safe level. Now she channeled all that energy into one massive plasma burst. The burst exploded outward in a sphere of electromagnetic interference. It washed over the swarm fleet like a wave, and suddenly the hive mind went silent. 10,000 bioships that had been acting as one organism suddenly found themselves alone. The quantum communication network that connected them was gone, scrambled by the plasma interference. Each ship had to think for itself, and they did not know how. The Council fleet, seeing the swarm falter for the first time ever, pressed the attack. Council warships that had been retreating for 3 years suddenly remembered what it felt like to advance. They poured fire into the confused swarm fleet. The other 11 human ships followed the Indomitable's lead. Each captain did something different, something unpredictable. The UEC Defiant, commanded by Daehyun, who had detected the original signal, flew in a spiral pattern while launching missiles that seemed to have no target. But when the missiles reached the center of the swarm fleet, they all detonated at once, creating a shockwave that scattered the bioships. The UEC Phoenix performed a maneuver that violated every rule of space combat. It shut down its engines and used only maneuvering thrusters, making it look like a piece of debris. When swarm ships moved past it, treating it as harmless wreckage, the Phoenix suddenly fired at point-blank range. The swarm had never faced tactics like this. Their hive mind had calculated every logical possibility, but logic could not predict insanity. The battle raged for 3 hours. The Indomitable's systems were failing, overheated and damaged. Salmon worked desperately to keep the ship functional. Captain, we're at 40% power. Life support is failing on decks 4 and 5. The main reactor is going to shut down if we don't cool it soon. How long can we keep fighting? Minho asked. 10 minutes, maybe less. Minho looked at the battle display. The swarm was retreating. For the first time in the war, they were actually pulling back. The Council fleet was pursuing them, driving them out of the system. All human ships, this is Minho. We've done our part. Fall back to Theranos for repairs. As the 12 battered human ships limped back to the fortress world, Thranox's voice came over the comm channel. Captain Minho, what you did today should not have been possible. You attacked a force that outnumbered you 1,000 to 1. You should all be dead. We're too stubborn to die, Minho replied. On Theranos, the humans were treated as heroes. The Council species had never seen anything like the human attack. It was reckless, unpredictable, and completely insane. It was also the first victory they had achieved in 3 years, but the victory came at a cost. 2 human ships had been destroyed in the battle. 437 crew members were dead. In mission control on Earth, Yuna received the casualty lists and felt her heart break for the families who would never see their loved ones again. Taijin spent the day after the battle working with Council scientists. They had managed to capture a damaged swarm bioship, and he was desperate to understand how it worked. What he discovered was both fascinating and disturbing. The swarm was not really a single organism. It was millions of individual creatures that had merged their minds together. Each bioship contained thousands of small organisms working in perfect unison. They had given up individual thought for the power of collective action. But why? Taijin asked Kailara, a Council scientist who had been helping him. Why would any species choose to lose themselves like this? Kailara was young for her species, barely into her adult phase. She had lost her entire family to the swarm. Perhaps they were afraid, she said quietly. Perhaps they thought unity was the only way to survive. As they worked together, an idea began to form. If the plasma interference could disrupt the swarm's communication temporarily, what if they could develop something that would disrupt it permanently? A device that would sever the hive mind entirely. They called it the Quantum Disruptor Array. Working around the clock, Taijin and Kailara designed a prototype. It would need to be deployed at the center of a swarm fleet to be effective. The pulse would spread outward, severing the quantum connections permanently. When they presented the design to the Council and the human commanders, everyone understood what it meant. Someone would have to fly into the heart of the swarm and manually activate the device. The interference it generated would prevent any remote detonation. It was a one-way mission. Minho stood up immediately. I'll do it. No, said a voice from the back of the room. Daehyun stepped forward. I heard the distress call first. I brought this to Admiral Heejin. I convinced Earth to answer. Let me finish what I started. Daehyun, you don't have to do this, Minho said. Yes, I do, Daehyun replied. When I heard that signal, I knew someone was dying. I knew someone needed help. Every decision I've made since then has been about answering that call. Let me answer it completely. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what Daehyun was volunteering for. He would die alone, surrounded by enemies in the cold darkness of space. But his sacrifice would give the Council fleet a chance to destroy the swarm. The plan was set. The Council fleet would create a corridor through the swarm forces. The UEC Defiant, with Daehyun at the helm and the disruptor array in its cargo bay, would fly to the center of the enemy formation. Once there, he would activate the device and break the hive mind forever. On the night before the mission, Daehyun sent a final message to Earth. He recorded it in his quarters alone, knowing his sister would be the one to watch it first. Yuna, he said to the camera, by the time you see this, I'll be gone. I want you to know that I'm not afraid. I heard someone calling for help and I'm answering. That's what we do. That's what makes us human. Tell Mom and Dad I love them. Tell everyone at home that the galaxy is bigger and more beautiful than we ever imagined. And tell them that when others needed us, we were there. We answered the call. He stopped recording and sat in the darkness thinking about home, about Seoul at night with its lights and noise and life, about his family, about all the things he would never see again. But he did not regret his choice. Someone had called for help, and he was going to answer. The next morning, the fleet prepared to launch the assault. Daehyun climbed into the pilot seat of the UEC Defiant for the last time. A plea resounded across the galaxy, and humanity answered. The human fleet dropped out of FTL speed at the edge of the coordinates where the signal had originated. What they saw made every crew member fall silent. The stars were wrong. Where there should have been light, there was only darkness. Entire solar systems had gone cold. Planets that once held life were now dead rocks floating in space. Debris fields stretched in every direction, the remains of ships and stations and worlds. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Minho stared at the main screen in horror. "Summon, what am I looking at?" The chief engineer checked her readings 3 times before answering. "Captain, I'm detecting residual energy signatures from at least 50 destroyed planets. Whatever did this consumed everything. Life support systems, power cores, even the organic matter. It's like something ate them." Jiwoo pulled up tactical data on her screen. "Sir, I'm reading debris patterns from thousands of ships. The metal is fused and twisted. The heat signatures suggest they were destroyed while trying to retreat." Taejun, the xenobiologist, looked at the biological readings and felt sick. "Captain, I'm detecting organic compounds in the debris fields. Not from bodies. From something else. Whatever destroyed these worlds, it's biological." Before Minho could respond, the communications officer called out. "Sir, we're being hailed. Audio only, unknown language." "Put it through and run translation," Minho ordered. The speaker crackled to life. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. "Unknown vessels, this is Galactic Council patrol ship Mercy's End. You have entered a dead zone. There is nothing here but ghosts. Turn back while you still can. Do not become victims like us." Minho leaned forward in his chair. "This is Captain Minho of the United Earth Coalition ship Indomitable. We received your distress signal. We came to help." There was a long silence. When the voice returned, it sounded confused. "You came from where, Earth? But you are a primitive species. Our scans from your world showed you barely achieved nuclear fusion. You should not have faster-than-light travel. You should not be here." "Well, we are here," Minho replied. "And we're not leaving." "What's attacking you?" Another pause, longer this time. "You should not have come. But since you are here, follow our beacon. We will escort you to Theranos, the last fortress world. The Council will want to meet the humans who answered the call." The 12 human ships followed the alien vessel through the graveyard of dead systems. The patrol ship was massive, 3 times the size of the Indomitable. Its hull bore scars from countless battles. Entire sections looked like they had been torn away by something with claws. After 6 hours of flight, they arrived at Theranos. The planet was surrounded by defensive stations, weapons platforms, and hundreds of warships. But even from a distance, the humans could see the desperation. The stations were damaged. The ships looked exhausted. This was not a strong defense. This was a last stand. The human fleet was guided to a docking station in orbit. As Minho, Jiwoo, Somin, and Taijin prepared to shuttle down to the planet, the crew watched them with worried eyes. They were about to meet an alien species for the first time in human history. They were about to step into a war they knew nothing about. The shuttle landed on Theranos in a secured military compound. As the doors opened, the 4 humans got their first look at alien life. The beings waiting for them stood on 2 legs, but that was where the similarity to humans ended. They were taller, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. Their eyes were large and dark, and their hands had 6 fingers each. They wore uniforms that seemed to shift colors based on their movement. One of them stepped forward. The translation device on Minho's belt turned its words into Korean. "I am Speaker Threenox of the Galactic Council. You are the humans from Earth." "Yes," Minho replied. "We heard your call for help." Threenox made a gesture that might have been surprise. "We did not expect anyone to answer. Certainly not a species from the frontier regions. You should not have come. This is not your fight." "You asked for help," Minho said simply. "We came." They were led into a massive chamber where 7 different alien species sat in a council formation. Each species looked completely different from the others. Some were similar to Threenox's people. Others looked like they had evolved from insects or birds or things humans had no names for. Threenox addressed the council. "These are the humans from Earth. They claim they came in response to our distress signal." One of the council members, a being covered in what looked like crystal scales, spoke in a harsh voice. "How is this possible? Earth is a nothing world. They have no technology worth noting. They have no weapons that could threaten the swarm." "The swarm?" Taejin asked. Is that what's attacking you? Threenox nodded slowly. Yes, the Vrelith swarm. They appeared 3 cycles ago from beyond our mapped space. They are a hive mind, billions of biological ships acting as one organism. They consume planets, strip them of all organic and inorganic matter, and use it to create more of themselves. We have fought them on 1,000 worlds. We have lost every battle. Jiwoo studied the tactical displays on the walls. You have superior technology. How are you losing? Because they adapt, another council member replied. They learn from every engagement. They evolve. And they are infinite. For every ship we destroy, 10 more appear. We are the Galactic Council. We have ruled this region of space for 10,000 years, and in 3 years the swarm has brought us to extinction. Minho looked at his team, then back at the council. Let us see your tactical data. Let us study how they fight. Maybe we can find something you missed. The crystal-scaled being laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You? What can primitives offer that we have not already tried? Respect, Soman said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. You asked for help. We came across 200 light years to answer you. Maybe show some respect. The chamber fell silent. Threenox studied the humans for a long moment. You are right. Forgive us. Desperation has made us forget courtesy. We will share everything we know about the swarm. For the next 12 hours, the human team studied the council's data. Jiwoo analyzed battle records. Solomon examined the technical specifications of swarm bioships. Taejin studied the biological samples, and slowly patterns began to emerge. They're too coordinated, Jiwoo said, pointing at a battle simulation. Look at this engagement. 3,000 swarm ships acting in perfect unison. No delays, no confusion. It's like they're all one mind. Because they are, Taejin added. The biological samples show quantum entanglement in their neural structures. They're communicating instantly across any distance. Every ship knows what every other ship knows. Someone looked at the data and suddenly sat up straight. Wait, quantum entanglement means they're using specific frequencies, and we have something that can disrupt those frequencies. What? Minho asked. Plasma interference technology, Soman explained. We developed it for solar research. It creates massive electromagnetic pulses that scramble quantum communication. We've never used it as a weapon because it would be useless against human ships, but against a hive mind that relies on quantum communication? Jiwoo finished the thought. It would blind them. They'd lose coordination. Before they could discuss further, alarms blared throughout the facility. Threenox burst into the room. The swarm has found us. They're here. A fleet of 10,000 bioships just entered the system. Minho looked at his team. They had been here less than a day, and already they were going to war. Get back to the Indomitable. Soman, can you modify our weapons to generate that plasma interference? It will burn out the power systems, Soman warned. One shot and we'll need hours to recharge. Then we better make it count, Minho replied. The 4 humans ran for their shuttle. As they lifted off from Theranos, they could see the swarm fleet appearing on the edge of the system. The bioships were massive organic things that pulsed with sickly light. They moved through space like a swarm of insects, flowing around each other in perfect formation. The council fleet moved to intercept. Hundreds of ships representing the last defense of 7 species, and leading them now were 12 human vessels that had no business being in this fight. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Minho took his position in the captain's chair. He opened a channel to the fleet. All human ships, this is Minho, we came here to help. Now it's time to show them what humans can do. Prepare for battle. The swarm fleet accelerated toward them. 10,000 bioships against a few hundred defenders. The odds were impossible, but humans had never been good at accepting impossible odds. A plea resounded across the galaxy, and humanity answered. The Deep Space Monitoring Station hung in orbit above Earth like a silent guardian. Inside the control room, Lieutenant Commander Daehyun sat at his station, watching the endless stream of data flow across his screens. Most nights were quiet. Most nights nothing happened. But tonight was different. At 0347 hours, every screen in the room suddenly lit up with the same signal. Daehyun leaned forward, his heart racing. The signal was powerful, more powerful than anything he had ever detected. It was coming from beyond the edge of mapped space, from a region where humans had never ventured. He put on his headset and began recording. The signal was not random static or natural cosmic noise. It had structure. It had meaning. Someone was broadcasting this message, and they were broadcasting it everywhere. Daehyun worked through the night, running the signal through every translation algorithm the station had. By dawn, he had something. The message was not in any Earth language, but the mathematical patterns were universal. Whoever sent this message wanted it to be understood by anyone who heard it. The translation was rough, but the meaning was clear. We are the last. Our worlds burn. Our fleets are broken. Death comes for us, and we cannot stop it. If any civilization hears this message, remember us. Remember that we tried. Remember that we were here. Daehyun sat back in his chair, staring at the words on his screen. Somewhere out in the darkness of space, an entire civilization was dying. They had sent out one final message, hoping someone would hear. Hoping someone would care. He knew what he had to do. Protocol said that unverified alien signals should be studied for weeks before reporting to command. But protocol was written for ordinary signals, not for this. Not for a dying plea from the stars. Daehyun picked up the secure line and called Admiral Heejin. 2 days later, Daehyun stood in a briefing room at United Earth Coalition headquarters in Seoul. The room was filled with admirals, generals, and government officials. Admiral Heejin stood at the front, her expression serious. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, 3 days ago we received first contact with alien life. That contact was a distress call. The room erupted in voices. Questions flew from every direction. Heejin raised her hand for silence. Lieutenant Commander Daehyun detected and translated the message. The signal originated from a point approximately 200 light-years from Earth. Based on the power of the transmission and the desperation in its content, we believe an advanced alien civilization is under attack and facing extinction. A general near the back stood up. "What does this have to do with us? We've only had faster-than-light travel for 10 years. We've never left our local star cluster. This is not our fight." "That's exactly the question before us," Heejin replied. "Do we respond or do we ignore the call?" The debate went on for hours. Some argued that humanity should focus on its own survival and development. Others said that responding to the signal could bring danger to Earth. The aliens who sent the message were losing their war. Whatever was destroying them might be too powerful for humanity to face. But there were others who argued differently. They said that this was humanity's chance to prove itself, not just to the galaxy, but to themselves. They said that if humanity heard a cry for help and did nothing, what did that say about who they were? In the end, the decision went to a vote. It was close, but the answer was yes. Humanity would respond to the call. Captain Minho was in his quarters on the UEC Indomitable when he received the orders. He read them twice, then read them again. The United Earth Coalition was assembling a fleet of 12 ships to respond to the alien distress signal. The Indomitable would lead the fleet and he would be in command. Minho walked to his window and looked out at Earth below. He thought about his sister Yuna, who worked in mission control. He thought about his parents who had survived the food wars of the 2040s. They had taught him that when someone needed help, you helped them. It did not matter if they were a stranger. It did not matter if it was dangerous. You helped because it was right. He accepted the command. Over the next week, 12 ships prepared to depart. The Indomitable was joined by 11 other vessels, each one representing the best humanity had to offer. Engineers worked around the clock to prepare the ships for the longest journey humans had ever attempted. On the Indomitable, Minho assembled his key crew. Jiwoo, his tactical officer, was young but brilliant. She could calculate firing solutions faster than the ship's computers. Soman, his chief engineer, knew every system on the ship better than the people who built it. Taijun, the xenobiologist, had spent his entire career studying the possibility of alien life. Now he would finally meet it. The night before departure, the crew was given leave to say goodbye to their families. Minho met Yuna at their favorite restaurant in Seoul. They sat across from each other, not eating, just looking. "You don't have to do this," Yuna said quietly. "You could transfer command. Stay here." Minho shook his head. "Someone sent out a call for help. How can I ignore that? They might all be dead by the time you get there," Yuna replied. "You might be flying toward nothing." "Then I'll have tried," Minho said. "That has to count for something." Yuna reached across the table and took her brother's hand. "Come back to me," she whispered. "Please come back." The next morning, the 12 ships of humanity's first contact fleet assembled in orbit. Millions watched on Earth as the vessels prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed. In mission control, Yuna sat at her station, watching her brother's ship on the main screen. Admiral Heejin's voice came over the comm channel. "Captain Minho, you are authorized to depart. Bring honor to humanity. Bring hope to whoever is waiting out there." "Understood, Admiral," Minho replied. "Fleet jumping in 3, 2, 1. The 12 ships vanished in flashes of light, leaving Earth behind. They jumped into the unknown, following a signal from a dying civilization. They had no idea what they would find. They had no idea if they would survive. But they knew one thing with absolute certainty. Someone had called for help. And humanity had answered. The journey would take 3 weeks at maximum FTL speed. 3 weeks to reach a place humans had never been. 3 weeks to discover what was destroying an alien civilization. 3 weeks to prepare for whatever was waiting in the darkness. In the captain's chair of the Indomitable, Minho looked at his crew. They were scared. He was scared, but they were going anyway because that was what humans did. They heard someone crying in the dark and they ran toward it, not away. The stars stretched into lines of light as the fleet traveled faster than light itself. Behind them, Earth grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared. Ahead of them, the unknown waited. The plea had resounded across the galaxy. Now humanity would answer.